All right, and joining us to do justice to the topic this morning, three guests. And first, I want to introduce Engineer Emeka Eze, OFR, past Director General, Bureau of Public Procurement, and past President, Nigeria Society of Engineers, and Chairman, Board of Trustees, Nigeria Society of Engineers. So you're welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning, viewers.
And also joining us from Kaduna Studios is Engineer Isa Osman Moabino, Road Reform Advocate and Highway Expectorant Pioneer Chairman, Nigerian Institution of Highway and Transportation Engineers. So you're welcome to the program.
Welcome to the program.
And via Zoom from Makurdi, Benue State, is Engineer Felix Atume. Engineer Atume is the former registrar of the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, COREN. Good morning and welcome from Kogi State.
Oh, from Benue State. Thank you very much.
Or Benue, rather. Thank you. Kinsley.
All right, Kieran, thanks a lot. Let's begin with our guest in the Kaduna Network Center. That's Engineer Isa Osman Moabino. Look, when you see the visuals of our highways that we saw a moment ago, for instance, in our background, as well as what gets to be published in the newspapers from time to time, you cannot but be horrified by the state of these highways, particularly during the wet season that we are in. What is happening from your reading? Is it inappropriate design, design failure, construction failure, poor maintenance, or just how do you explain this?
Thank you so very much for this program. I think it's a good thing that we're talking about Nigeria roads again. But to go ahead and answer your question, I think it's a national embarrassment that we continue to have this kind of failures and not decide to do something different to get them cleared out. The failures on the road are definitely something that can be cleared out by professionals given the mandate and the wherewithal to try to get our infrastructure in place. Yes, the failure can be attributed to a combination of all the issues you raised, but I think more fundamentally, we also need to look at the institutional network on how we actually manage our infrastructure. How do we manage our road system? These are also part of it. Issues of how is the road managed? Who is in charge? And how is he able to access funds as at when due to be able to get these things done on time? A failure on a road will not give you any long-time warning. Yeah, there will be some sign that there's an element of failure occurring, and you are expected to attack that failure, to maintain or to correct that failure immediately. The more time you leave for a failure to continue to occur, especially when flooding is involved, then of course you are losing the road. It's not something that will wait for you to go and get ready. You should be ready as at when you need to repair a road, as at when you need to do the road. I won't attribute the failure to issues of design, because designs are done based on data available as at when the design is being done. As things begin to change, it's expected that you will also go ahead and change with it in line with maintenance, in line with accessibility of funding to be able to do your jobs. Also in line with institutional framework of being able to get it done in the right manner. I wonder where we still relate and we are unable to set up a federal road authority that will have the 100% reliance on road construction, road design, road maintenance, and all aspects of our road networks. We think it is high time we get that done. We also need to have a sustainable means of funding for our road. We can't continue to be using emergency approaches to do things that are ordinarily going to be continuous. We should have sustainable means of getting fund for road. We should have sustainable means of having institutional framework to get the road system to be carried out properly. Nigerian Society of Engineers, to my knowledge, has tried enormously to try to get this thing done. They have followed it up for the past 35 years, I'm aware, of trying to ensure that there are road sector reforms, and those reforms are carried out to the fullest. But unfortunately, that has not happened. And we do hope that as engineers, we do hope that these things will begin to happen. Now we have a new government. I believe that they will not expect to continue to do the old thing. I expect a different result. The moment you are not doing the correct thing, the moment you are not changing your tactics to a problem that you have identified, you cannot get a solution to it. We've identified that transportation, especially road network, that carries 80–90% of the transportation system we have in Nigeria. We should have a very clear institutional framework to handle that sector if we really want to get on. We can't continue now to begin to do the issue of budgeting and designing road, deciding which road to do on the basis of maybe political consideration. This should be done on the basis of technical consideration, on the basis of the use of the road, the traffic load on the road. These are issues that you need to consider to know which road to repair, which road to work out, and which road to design. And maybe I should mention here too that most of the roads we have in Nigeria, they are transferred roads from colonial era. Is it not time for us to now begin to have green approach to this? Design new pathways, new roads, new alignments that will ensure that things are carried out. The farmers are able to bring their goods clearly to the market, and we are able to transport things from the production areas to the areas of use. The colonial master that designed this, actually, if you look at the road properly, they were actually made to carry goods from the various hinterlands down to Lagos port, where they'll be exported to the various European countries. But now...
Engineer Emeagwabino, we're going to return to you for further explanations, but the ones we've done so far are quite well taken, and of course we've had this again in the past, in all the reforms and what have you, yet nothing has changed. Now let's come to Engineer Emeka Eze here with us. Engineer Emeagwabino noted that it is not in the design of the roads that's the problem. I wouldn't know that it's about soil texture, because if you apply Lokoja to Abuja, you will see some roads. I don't know whether they melted or something. I don't know. You see some rise and fall of the road. You could see that something is wrong underneath, meaning that perhaps the soil texture was not taken into consideration, before the laying of whatever the engineers did to come up with the road. So, in your take, does it have to do with the road design? But I saw one road in Ebonyi State, to be honest with you, for the first time in my life, that in Nigeria, that I've seen it, concrete. Look, I said, okay, we're going somewhere. I said, look, let's do the full stretch of it. We couldn't get to, because I didn't want to lose where I was going. I said, let me. I was enjoying the driving on the road. Concrete, completely concrete. I'm not sure flood will have anything to do with that kind of thing. So it's about design now. For the governor of Ebonyi, who is an engineer, to have done that, I believe there's something about it. Concrete road. Tell us about it and more.
Yeah, thank you. Well, good morning, viewers. Specification and design is part of it. And of course, the road is designed based on the traffic and the load and the use of which is going to be put. And many a time, that is why in the past you used to have toll gates and weight bridges to make sure that the road is not subjected to loads more than designed. And if you notice, the Abuja-Lokoja road that started in 2003 was not meant to carry the kind of load that is carrying. And perhaps that's the beauty of flexible road. Asphalt roads are called flexible roads. And so that when there is a failure like that, it moves like that. Of course, you know what's happening. On that road is a highly trafficked area with a lot of cement trucks coming and go. So the load on that road is not modulated. And so, having said that, a flexible road like asphaltic roads can last for as many as 50 years, depending on the traffic and the design and specifications. And specifications are a contingent of the projections of the traffic, and then who the design consultants are, and then of course the construction methodology. No doubt concrete is more expensive, maybe by about 20%, but it has its own plus and minus. If you're able to do it, it's good, but the only problem is that if there is a failure, it becomes more catastrophic, because once you cross through, the tire will cut, because it's the sharp, the concrete failure is almost more devastating if it fails. But you notice that in Lagos, Oshodi to Apapa Port is being done under a tax credit by Dangote, and it's concrete. And I'm sure that as time goes on, more of such one will be introduced, but it's more expensive. But more importantly, is what was mentioned by Issa in terms of institutional framework for addressing small maintenance issues. Because what we have today, and it happens all over, not only on federal roads, as simple as there has been a washout somewhere in Karo, where I live, that I have given notice for 4 years ago, and I called the authorities, hey, there's something that's coming up here. Can you come up and go and fix it? As I'm talking to you, 4 years now, nothing has happened. Until one day, we just come, the road will cut into two, we'll start running helter-skelter. And so that institutional framework of how do you address minor things as they rear their head comes up the issue of funding. When I was to become the president of Society of Engineers in 2006, we had what we called, how do you fund the roads? And the issue of road fund authority comes in, where maybe $1 or 5% of the fuel tax is used to dedicated for federal roads or roads nationwide, because the money is a federation money. So every sector of the economy, federal, state governments, and states get some money out of that fuel tax. So to say 5% of it can be dedicated to managing our federal infrastructure. With that, we have regular source of income, so that if there is a little stress on the road, you don't have to wait until you have a budget, because that little thing that could have cost you 1 million, if you allow it to linger, can take another 20 or 40 or even 1 billion. And that's the problem. Most of our roads that are constructed have exceeded their lifespan. And unfortunately, we think that once a road is constructed, it's going to be forever. And so we don't have a mechanism to maintain them. And in some cases, the roads are abused by the road users. You dump all manners of refuse on the road, the drainage system is blocked, and nobody's cleaning them. And that's the problem, the maintenance. Check through all federal roads. All the grassings, nobody's cleaning them. All the drainages, nobody's cleaning them. And then, of course, when the rains come, I say in my place that Flood said, if you're struggling for the ownership of the land and the boundary, wait. During the rainy season, I will tell you where the boundary is. Or it will take its course. And so that's what happens. When we choose not to clean the drains that will allow the water to go away, when the rains come, if there's no space, you come into the road.
No, but Engineer Eze, while you are still speaking, when we say the roads are not maintained, let's say just even clearing vegetation that are growing on the hard shoulder, the drains are not unclogged, whose responsibility is that? We knew about road menders and road makers in the past. So did they just vanish and then nobody does any work again? Everybody sits in the office and then waiting for the roads to maintain themselves?
That's exactly what you're talking about, the institutional framework. The Society of Engineers have been at the forefront of running for that federal road authority with power to do such things, to come back. Because remember, in those days, the federal highways were not as many as they are today. With new states and the expansion, the job is getting more and more, no doubt. But if you need to change the intervention speed, we need to have a federal highway authority that will have a sort of funding that can respond. And of course, with good, putting the right people in place who are committed, and monitoring mechanism to ensure they do them, and sanction those who don't do them. The problem is that even when you put them and you don't have a mechanism to monitor compliance, then it's as good as nothing. Because, for instance, each state has the federal control of works. And then the federal control of works does not have funds, even to fix the list of the boreholes. FEMA, for instance, is there as a federal agency to address issues of emergencies. FEMA doesn't have money to do that. And so what do? You see that the road is valid. Even in Nyanya here, Nyanya to Kefi Road, until recently when they began to rehabilitate it, it was in very bad shape. And each time I will call the FEMA MD, I say, hey, Road is calling this, come and clean this drain. They don't have money. So what do you want to do?
No, well, I will come to the issue of FEMA again. The Nigerian elite challenge. Let's put it that way. In 1998-99 in this country, the Nigerian elites were yelling and protesting that what was then known as the Petroleum Special Trust Fund, PTF, had become a parallel government because it was intervening in the multiple sectors, education, health, roads, that's works, and so on and so forth. And PTF was set up by Abacha to utilize the savings from the increase in the pump price of petrol. Nigeria, this was parallel government. So when democracy came in 1999, one of the first things they did was to set up an IMC, that is Interim Management Committee. And eventually they said, scrap PTF. And that instead of PTF putting his hands in many pies, create FEMA, so that FEMA will utilize the resources that ordinarily will flow from that. Instead of focusing on health, education, focus on roads. So 24 or so years later, let's even say 20 plus years later, what has happened? We know what PTF was doing. Failed sections, PTF will mobilize and go there and work. So what has happened since then?
Yeah, because that's a very good example. But unfortunately, FEMA doesn't get the funds. FEMA is still, in the budget, like Federal Minister works in the budget. So if you don't have if you have all the ideas and you don't have the money to implement them, what do? It's not there, and that is why we are at the forefront of pushing for the establishment of road funds authority. Road funds only with a view to getting money from the users, because the user charge. If I have 4 cars, you contribute 4 times to the deterioration of the road. If I have 1, I contribute once, and that will depend on the amount of fuel you buy. For each liter of fuel you buy, you pay like even 1 naira or 2 naira, and kept as a separate fund. The way you have a third fund for education, you have this fuel fund for road authority. With that, you have steady source of income to ensure that you intervene at the roads, and then more importantly, you rationalize the number of projects you embark on at the same time. Right now, what has happened is the government is spreading its resources so thinly that nothing gets done. A project will last for 3 years, gets done in 15, 20 years because of inadequate funding.
Okay. All right, let's bring in Engineer Felix Atume, former Registrar of Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, COREN. Engineer Felix, now we're in on all of this. You've listened to the 2 guests, and our topic has been on the flooding and the Nigerian road situation. We've seen situations where complete road network is being washed away by flooding. And we're asking, is it because of the design, lack of doing a soil test, or because of the materials used in doing the roads, or because the drainage system is blocked? In some cases, there are roads who don't even have drainage, at all. It's just road, just plastered. And again, in some states, like where I come from, you do a road today. In the next 6 months, 8 months, the road is already wearing out, after 1 or 2 rains. So what's your take?
Let me once again thank NTA for bringing up this very important topic for discussion. I will begin by what the panelists from the NTA said. Can't we even control the vegetation? Can't we even control the vegetation? That's the fundamental issue. The fundamental issue here is that the road is now an orphan. There's nobody in charge. I say so. Because the institutional framework is weak. The institutional framework is weak. And that is what we have been advocating. There should be a total reform in the road sector so that we have very strong institution and also a steady source of funding for maintenance. The road network, highways and bridges, the investment is in trillions of naira. How can you have an investment that is in trillions and you abandon it? You abandon it. That is the situation now. A few days ago, we got the news that the road from Benin to Sapele, a very critical road, is no longer motorable. It's because we depend on budget. Every year, the Federal Ministry of Works and FEMA will depend on budget. And we have said that this cannot work. And that is not the practice across the world. The practice now is that there must be a steady source of funding for road maintenance. No matter how you design the road, no matter the quality of construction, if you don't maintain the road, it will not reach the design lifespan. Every road has a design lifespan at the beginning of the design. And the design is based on traffic first, the volume of traffic converted to standard axles. Then you know the existing soil structure, that is the subgrade, and that will determine the thicknesses of the road. It can be, the finishing can be rigid pavement, that is the concrete pavement, or asphaltic concrete. With all these, there must be maintenance. If there is no process in place to have a sustainable source of getting funds to maintain the road, it will not last. And therefore, what the Nigerian Society of Engineers has advocated over the years is that let's have a reform in the road sector. And the 8th and 9th Assembly passed the bill to reform the road sector so that we can be doing what is desired of us. But the bill was not assented into law by the president. And so we are back to square one. We are back to depending on the budget to maintain basic drainage, as the panelists said. We have bought the budget to maintain basic clear hedges on the road. It's unthinkable of that kind of investment that you do and abandon. So I can say that we are on the right course. The new government has just come in place. We must have to reform the road sector. We must have to look for a steady source of funding for roads. We must have to ensure that the institutional framework for maintenance of roads is changed.
Okay, thank you very much, Engineer Felix Atume. Engineer Felix Atume, thanks. We'll just hope you are able to reposition your camera, probably your phone or your laptop or the device you are using to join us via Zoom, so that our viewers can see your face much more clearly when we come back to you. Gentlemen, when we say we are blaming the institutional framework or identifying the institutional framework as part of the challenge that is hobbling the proper maintenance of our federal highways. Look, when you say Ministry of Works, for instance, that is an institution. Earlier, Engineer Eze, you identified correctly that every state has a federal controller of works. So, that institution is there, but it is the effective functioning of the institution which is where the budgeting aspect comes in. When architect Mike Odolememe was Minister of Works, we had him on Good Morning Nigeria, and he said a few things, thereafter on a number of occasions. Part of what was identified was the funding arrangement, the timing of the funding. That when the releases come, the releases don't enable them to do the work when they are supposed to do the work during the dry season. That it spills into the rainy season, and then before you know it, the budget year ends, and then you make returns back to the Treasury. Is it possible for us to deal with that aspect? To say, look, because year in, year out, the new National Assembly, 10th Assembly, after ministers are cleared, after ministers are nominated and cleared and appointed, the next thing everybody will be talking about now will be the presentation of next year's appropriation. Oh, when the budget is passed, you say defense, works, health, get hefty bill, hefty allocation. What happens to the allocation, and when is the allocation released? I want to take advantage of of your experience at BPE, at BPP, to say, look, are we just announcing figures, or these figures are actually coming out timeously to enable us to do the work when we are supposed to do the work?
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a very good observation. I will share an example of what happened under late President Yar'Adua on East-West Road. A similar thing, because in the construction period within the Niger Delta area is virtually 3 months or 4 months in the year. And we were holding a budget meeting on time, and they had a appropriation of 89 billion. And by the time of December, they had not raised enough certificates to, and then there was the issue of mopping. And we did a memo to him and said, Mr. President, if you mop this money, by the time you finish the process, you're going to March and you have rainy season. And then he ordered that that money be warehoused, because the most construction period is January, February, March. And that was how that money was kept. And then within that dry period, a lot of mileages were achieved. We had also recommended that our budgeting year be moved from mid-June, July, like most companies, to take advantage of construction dry period. Or alternatively, to do accrual budget. Once you put budget, the issue of mopping up unspent funds should not arise, because that has led to a lot of projects being abandoned. Some of these projects that are all these roads are due to abandonment by the contractors. Another one is to adopt a kind of performance-based procurement system, where you don't pay item, but you pay for finished work. In other words, I start a road, I don't pay for clearing, I pay until you finish up the sub-base and cover to asphalt. 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers, rather than clear entire stretch of, say, 20 kilometers, lay base material, and you're waiting for payment, you're not paid. And the rains come and washes up out everything that you've done. And then you come back the next budgeting year and it goes on. And that's exactly what's going on. And so, and even when budget is released or passed, they have issues of payment procedures in ministries. And they happen under Yar'Adua. And Yar'Adua, there are some invoices that stay up to 3-4 months before they move from one point to the other, until the contractors come. Yar'Adua set up a 3-man committee headed by then economic advisor, the then head of service. I myself, we went to the Ministry of Works, and we have people whose invoices were almost as long as 3 months. With our intervention, within 3 days, they all got their payments, and the projects moved forward. So it's a combination of all these kind of things that even when money is budgeted, the process of contractors getting that money is also tedious. And then if a contractor doesn't get paid, because you have a contract period that says for every invoice that I sign, I must be paid within 30 or 60 days maximum, in line with the procurement law. But some cases, invoices are not paid 6 months, 2 years, and then the contractor leaves site. Rains come, everything that has done is gone.
Yeah, well, it's all about the planlessness, because if it's proper, from what I've explained, if it's properly planned, and when there is political will to get something achieved, just as you said, when you waited on that, within 3 days it was done, but it was lying there for 3 months. So it depends on political will of the leader, which of course was exemplified in that circumstance. Now let's bring back Issa Usman Emoah Bino. You are a road reform advocate and highway expert, meaning that you have a good understanding of how a highway should look like. Are you satisfied with the kind of quality of roads we have on our highways? I don't know how much you've traveled by road, because some of you may be flying, like my colleague. You know, I use roads a lot, you know, so I'd like you to share your views on the quality of highway roads we have in the country, and why is it that every rain season Nigeria loses kilometers of roads across the country to just flood, which may not last for more than 3 months. Maybe between August, September, we've lost a number of roads in this country based on flooding. And again, are you satisfied with the kind of designs that you've seen? I saw one in 9th Mile going to Onitsha, the one that has been contracted to MTN, you know, with, maybe it's a tax rebate or something. Right. But I'm satisfied with the thickness of the road in the first place. But again, as a non-professional, I will understand, you know, what has gone into the mixing and you know, the quality of the materials, you know, used to do that. Now, are you okay with what you see, or do you think you need an improvement? You said reforms should come. In what form should this reform come? Because we've seen a number of reforms in the country in the past, but they never yielded any dividends. And today we're still talking about what we ought to have done some years back.
Thank you so much for coming back to the issue of the quality of the roads that we fly on in Nigeria. And your question is if I'm satisfied, and the answer is simple: I'm not. I'm a professional in the system, an engineer. I handle road consultancy, and I know the details about what it takes to do a good and proper road. But the environment is not really there to get these things carried out. I think Engineer Eze tried to explain a few things about what we mean when we say institutional framework is not really available. Yes, there's a Federal Ministry of Works, but that is not what it takes to get a certain level of projects or road work to be carried out. It requires a lot more. The cycle of budgeting, for example, which you try to explain, gives us in Nigeria a system where you must begin to do your budget first few months of the year, which in Nigeria they are generally dry years, dry months. And then by the time you begin to fully get involved in road execution, after another 2-3 months of procurement period, you have actually gone into the rainy season. And like we have said, it's not the best time to do a road job. It's not the best time to do a sub-base or base work during the rainy season. It's not that it can't be done. Yes, it can be done, but it's not the best time to get that done cheaply. You will have to do it at a higher cost if you have to do that. So I am not satisfied with the institutional framework that we have presently on ground to be able to get our road executed. That is one basic thing. The quality of roads that we have is determinant based on exactly what we have to support what we are presenting. You mentioned the issue of concrete road. I think the first example of concrete road that has been carried out here in Nigeria was done by Dangote, somewhere in Ogun State, and invited us. Then I was the chairman of Nigeria School of Highway Engineers. He invited us to come and have a look and give him a certain level of advice. And we did. We were there. We looked at it, and we gave him the necessary advice we thought were necessary to improve on the quality of the road, to improve on the design, and to improve on certain aspects. By the way, concrete road for engineers is referred to as rigid pavement, whereas the asphalt road is referred to as flexible pavement. The design for the two of them are done differently. They carry different level because of the time lag we expect them to have, also because of the kind of load we expect them to be able to carry. So the road, the way they are now, they are actually not getting the best they can from government. Even if you have to put funds, the way we are putting the funds, and the funds are not coming at the right time, you will really not get the best out of road. I think the other aspect you mentioned was, I think, if I was satisfied with the road. No, we are not satisfied with the road. We think we need to begin to do these things now in a different format. We have been doing it using the budgetary system for a long time, using the Ministry of Works as the institution that we carry out all the necessary design and construction, supervision, and maintenance. That has not worked. And I think we need to know that that has not worked. How do we now improve on it? I'm aware, and we are all aware, that Nigeria has eligible, qualified, capable hands in forms of engineers and technicians and so on to get these things done in-house. When I say in-house, I mean by Nigerians. But, of course, for whatever reason it seems, each of the road sites you go to, you see a lot of foreign faces or foreigners being there to handle the job that Nigeria should be able to do. And we begin to say that most of these people that comes as foreigners to do the job for you, they are here on business. They get done what you have invited them to do, and they are going back to their base. But in Nigeria handling that same job, within certain level of conditions, we make sure that he's putting in the very best in terms of materials that you mentioned. You mentioned the issue of whether the materials you have seen, some materials are not qualified and, quality enough to be able to handle a job. Construction is done in terms following certain level of codes and standards. And as road gets done, there are tests you need to carry out. There are quality control tests that you must carry out as a road is being executed. As any project really is being executed, there are certain level of standards and codes you must follow. And this can only be followed up through tests that you have to carry out. Various levels of tests you have to carry out to ensure that the material is suitable for what you want to use it for, to ensure that the environment is in line with the material you are bringing in. You will not construct a road in Bayelsa, for example, with the same level of material, with the same level of quality as compared to a road in Maiduguri, for example. The environment, the two environments are quite different. And your approach, your areas of concentration, for an engineer to supervise a road like that, to design a road in this very environment will be different. But here in Nigeria, I don't think we take all those into consideration when we begin to be in a hurry to satisfy political means, political requests to be able to get a job done. You'll be surprised to have a job is awarded before you begin to think of a design. I've had that experience, and I was embarrassed when I got a situation where I had to supervise or monitor a road, and I discovered that no design has been done. Of course, we stopped the road. I said that, no, you must first of all have a design. How did you discover the road no design has been done? We needed to have a bridge across a certain swamping area, and I requested for the design of the bridge, and it was not existing. Okay, where is the actual design of the road? It was not there.
Okay, Engineer Issa, thank you very much for the points that you have raised, and of course the other guests, we still have them with us, Engineer Eze here in the studios, and also via Zoom from Makurdi in Benue State, Engineer Felix Atume. We'll take a short break now. When we return from the break, we'll continue with the conversation.
The job of making Nigeria great is my ambition, is my dream. To renew the hope of Nigerians, to really bring about changes that will promote unity, equity, stability, and prosperity for this country. It's not a one-man's job. It's a job of all of us.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Nigeria means unity.
Nigeria means freedom to me.
Nigeria means greatness to me.
To Nigeria is indivisible. There is nothing you can do. We all have to savage it together and learn to love each other. We are indivisible.
As a mother and a leader, I will always preach for peace and unity in this country, because that is the only thing that will give us progress.
Though tribes and tongues may differ, in brotherhood we stand. And it is the woman that does that.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Engineer Felix Atume, I want to come back to you via Zoom. Yes, we can complain about inadequate funding. We can look for a super agency such as the Federal Highway Authority or otherwise. But under the current arrangement, are we making the very best of it? I want you to take a look, for instance, at some of the political interventions that we do get on a budgetary basis. Look, I remember this argument was made some years ago to say the focus of the Federal Ministry of Works would be it would take arterial roads in the country that can have multiplier effects on socio-economic activities. And when they are done with that, then they start going to other roads that are also federal roads. I mean, major roads, for instance, you say Benin, Auchi, Okene, Lokoja, Abuja, to Kaduna, to Zaria, to Kano, and then from Kano to Meduguri, and so on and so forth, Enugu, straight to Port Harcourt, and all that. But there is always the political intervention from those who have the power of the purse, namely the lawmakers. The lawmakers will argue that they represent constituents and that those constituents are citizens of Nigeria, and the roads that they use are also federal roads in their constituencies. So you end up atomizing the allocations to these other entities, and the big money, the big ticket you need to fund the bigger projects and achieve quicker and faster results don't, of course, eventually come. Plus, the challenge that Engineer Eze also mentioned. Is there a way experts like you can ramp up advocacy for a more considered allocation of resources so that we focus on the big picture, the bigger pictures, get those bigger pictures done, and then save ourselves this embarrassment from which we all suffer?
Thank you very much. You have said it all. The bigger picture is the prioritization. And that can be done only by experts in a well-established institution. When we say the reforms in the institution, let me go back to what you mentioned. You said in PTF, the money realized was judicially used for the purposes for which it was intended, because there was a separate executing agency from the policy agency. PTF was headed by President Buhari, General Buhari as he was then, and the executing agency was AfriProject. AfriProject had engineers, other professionals. They were able to deploy consultancy properly. They were able to monitor contractors properly, because that was their own role. And today, Ministry of Works is involved in policy. Ministry of Works is involved in virtually everything, including execution. It can't work well. You have rightly said, how can you compare the importance of Okene, Benin Road to any other small road, small in terms of traffic? But it is done. The Okene Benin Road has been on for a long time. That means there's no prioritization. Anybody comes and new projects are brought on board. The major ones are abandoned because of this institutional framework that is weak. So what we can do, what we are advocating is that let us do what is happening elsewhere. If you go to UK now, there's the England Highways. There can be the Secretary of Transport, but it has nothing to do with what is happening at the England Highways. They are separate entity. And when the institutional framework is properly in place, you attract the private sector. Today in Nigeria, there is no successful public-private partnership project on highways. There's none. There's none. What you call the executive order 7, the tax credit, is not a PPP arrangement. A proper PPP arrangement is the private sector is invited, they construct the road, they take the risk, and they recover their money over a period of 30 to 35 years. That is not happening in Nigeria, but there are capable people to carry out the PPP. But the institutional framework is not allowing it. There's PPP in South Africa, there's PPP in Senegal, successful. It is not in Nigeria until these reforms are properly carried out.
Okay. Thank you indeed, Engineer Felix. Now, let's return to the studio here. Engineer Emeka has a number of issues have been raised so far. But then I'm now concerned about how so easy it is for flood to wash out our roads. What are the major challenges of flooding on these roads? Is it because they don't have a drainage system? But most of them really on the highway don't have drainage system. There are no tools about it. But I understand that there are soil textures that might not require for you to have drainages on both sides of the road, right? But there are areas that, for me, it should be inevitable that this should happen. If you're going to Gwarimpa, for instance, I don't know how to describe it for you, but before you just make left turn into Gwarimpa, there's a particular place there. You saw, a drainage system that came and terminated there. Right, but when the rain comes, it will now overflow the whole place. You won't even know the one that is a road anymore. The other side of it, nothing like a drainage system. So why should such road be constructed by professionals, especially the foreign professionals that we deploy? I want to ask the engineers a question as to why is it that most of our huge construction sites that you have of all foreign contractors, Julius Berger and the rest of them, where are Nigerian engineers? Can't two people come together to have a consortium like the Julius Berger of this world to say, look, we have 2-3 major construction companies in Nigeria owned by members of Nigerian Society of Engineers, which of course is the crop of engineers in this country. I have been privileged to cover, to report science and tech, and I've always met engineers, scientists, technologists, and what have you. Then I realized that there's no cohesion in the first place. There's no cohesion. The man who read mechanical engineering feels superior to the man who read civil engineering, and that's what you get across board. So why is it that we don't have huge and well-known construction firms in Nigeria owned by Nigerians that could deal with us, because we understand ourselves, that could deal with this job? Because the foreigners will come, pay them the money, and then they do what they have to do and leave. But if a Nigerian is concerned, I recall when one of our governors engaged locals to do roads, they didn't do that well, but perhaps he was able to empower some of our local construction firms and what have you. But again, it depends on the amount of money released to them that will determine the quality of the jobs they're going to do. But most of the time, these roads are washed out. What are the Nigerian engineers doing to begin to do things by ourselves? Remember, the past administration had Executive Order 5, which of course is talking about our own local content in all things that we do.
Well, thank you. You've raised a lot of issues in line with even what my colleague Felix said. But let me just address that before I come back to you. The issue of how we have abused even the little funds available to us. I wish I would have come with 2023 budget and see how, because a budget is a document of intention of what you want to do and the resource allocation. If you see 2023 budget, you find that the intent, there was no way government will achieve anything with that budget. In the sense that you can see a project costing 1 billion with an allocation of 50 million. And then a project of 20 billion having an allocation of 500 million. And the project is supposed to last for say 2, 4, 5 years. And you're putting only 500 million there. So when you now look at them, you find out that the idea is not to conclude anyone at all. And that's what led to President Yar'Adua. I keep referring to President Yar'Adua because these things didn't start today. They've always been there. He set up a committee again that I was privileged to be part of, and we went back to the ministry and then froze some projects. All the projects that have attained 80% completion, we froze, and all the other projects, and got all the members of National Assembly and say, hey, they used to have 2 billion per state. He said, hey, he sponsored my trip to the Capitol Hill in United States to look at their, what they call intervention of constituency projects. In America, they call it federal earmarks, where the federal lawmakers can only intervene in federal responsibilities. In other words, you have federal, you have local, and you have state government. A federal lawmaker is only allowed to draw the attention of the federal authorities to infrastructure that is the responsibility of federal government in their locality for that to be accommodated in the project. And so what President Yar'Adua did was to say, okay, all of you that are talking for constituency projects, tell me the federal institutional road that is most appropriate in your area. That we are 2 billion, we'll put it to augment what we have provided. And that was what he did. For instance, Enugu-Onitsha Road, the senators there had 2 billion. He put the 2 billion in Enugu-Onitsha Road then. He said federal government will not go and do borehole. Federal government will not go and do town hall. Government will not go and do local empowerment because that's not a federal responsibility. Or go and buy youth empowerment, street roads, and solar light all over the place. These are state and local government responsibility. If you get our budget today, I can assure you that up to 400-500 billion spread across the entire nation, accounts MDAs, are devoted to such things. And you don't have anything. Go back that memory lane and see the solar lights that were done 5-6 years ago. Where are they working? Are they working? Go and check the boreholes that were done. When the borehole works for 6 months and there's the need for you to repair them, who does it? They're abandoned. And so it's littered all over the country. So my own take is that federal government has no business engaging in state responsibilities. Town halls, health centers, and all that. Coming back to you, you see, we said it before, that when you design a road and there is a gutter by the side and you don't clean them, when the rains come, the rain cannot stay on. It has to move.
Find its level.
It's simple, and that's it. And so, the issue of engineers coming together, yes, look at, it's a kind of economy that no matter how knowledgeable I am as an engineer, there's no way I can build a 10-story building without equipment. Because you need equipment. And so, and we don't have local leasing company facility here. Mm-hmm. We don't have, our iron and steel industry is dead. And nothing, there's nowhere you can get equipment even to do the, and you're not paying on time. So how do you get equipment? With all the first knowledge you have. It's like having a surgeon, as a very big surgeon, and you don't have equipment to do operation. What are you going to do? So that's the problem. So we don't have, within the engineering profession, we don't have a kinds of any infight. No. All we do is that we are being shut out totally at the policy making level, to the extent that people who make policies for you don't know how the sector is run. And so they make policies from their own feelings, for their own perception, without taking into consideration the in-depth detail that is needed for their policy. Of course, we have been hammering that ideally, like in China, most of the ministers have scientific and engineering background that will enable them to think in 3 dimensions. And we were expecting that perhaps the new government will take that into consideration in assigning people portfolios, that people who have technical issues will be, is better assigned those areas. They will better understand and appreciate than somebody who is going to learn. We had a situation where somebody said he didn't have any experience in education, but he was sent in education.
Now, why is it that we don't have indigenous construction firms?
We did have. We had Hedel and Eric in those days.
Mm-hmm. Where is it?
Before Hedel and Eric, we had them.
We had Oni and Sons.
We have Oni and Sons.
Where are they? That's what I'm asking.
They're not there because, one, they're not treated like the way that the foreigners are treated. They're not paid on time. They don't even have equipment. And at the point, the economy becomes so unreliable, unstable, that even when you have your money, like now you raise an invoice. At the point, the invoice was, some contracts were awarded when the exchange rate was 150 naira, right? And today, the exchange rate is 700 something. And you don't have the capacity to adjust it to that level to get the money. And then your equipment is down. You want to buy your equipment from Germany, or from China, or from wherever, you have to pay Forex. We don't have equipment leasing company here. So what do? You fold down or fold up, whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay, Engineer Eze, thanks a lot. Gentlemen, more particularly Engineer Isa in our Kaduna Network studios, I have, there's a message here from one of our regular viewers, architect MB Bello. Of course, he watches Good Morning Nigeria keenly, and it is drawn our attention to two key points, because Kirian has been talking about flooding and why the roads get washed out, and Engineer Eze was also saying, look, if the side drains get seated up and they are not maintained, obviously water will flow. But Architect Bello is drawing our attention to what he's suggesting, namely better water management. He says a number of our rivers in the country are silted. So you have the overflow in the surrounding areas, because if you look at, for instance, surrounding areas as well as the tributaries, from where, if you go to a swampy location and where the road begins to fail, I don't know how much of massive desiccation we have done around the country, and it's also drawing attention to Lake Chad. Lake Chad is an idle reservoir where water, of course, could be channeled to once proper desiccation is done. Create more dams to arrest this and then reduce the impact of flooding on the roads. What are your thoughts about this, Engineer Issa?
Thank you very much, Kirian, for this input, and talking specifically about how the flooding affects the road profile. Basically speaking, yes, if you have proper control of water flow along the profile of a road, certainly you'll be saving the base and soft base and other portions of the road from getting destroyed. It is good to have a control of the waterways in such a way as to be able to save the road networks. But I think issues of control of waterways and issues of Lake Chad and so on, they are a little bit different from what we are talking about when we measure issues of road. Because roads run along profiles across different terrains and across different environments and so on. It is very important to have a road properly safeguarded from infiltration and penetration of water into the base and the soft base. It weakens it. And by the time you now have a standing pond or a standing river for a long time, of course that water we always find its level theory goes into the fact that the water will go into the pores of the base and soft base, weakens it. And of course, by the time you are now putting a load on top, you begin to have a failure because you have undulations that goes along the road. It is key, when you want to prevent flooding to affect your road, it is key to have proper road drainages. Not all drainages along the road must be concretized. There are a lot of environments you have where ordinary proper alignment and proper draining of the road without necessarily putting concrete and so on can be effective. Most roads don't run along a river channels. If the road is coming across a river channel, is different from a road running along a river channel. So the issues of having to do proper road water maintenance to stop the flooding aspect of road will be minimal, because that is not the key in respect of control of drainages along road networks. It's only within the river areas that you will have that to take place. But when you have continuous flooding, yes, it is correct that most of our rivers are actually seated up. And the seating up of a river obviously means that the water will now have to expand and open out to areas where it doesn't used to reach before. So if there's a road network around that area, the water will now go onto the road, because water must always find a way to continue to move to a lower grade. And it is the rule of nature that water will not be stagnant when there's a place that they can follow to pass. We will have to look at the possibilities of ensuring that drains are provided, but the cost of having to provide concrete drains or more specified drains all along every sector of road profile the cost will be too much for anybody to bear. So there must be natural means of control, where we need natural means of control, where we don't have the danger of flooding that will take place continuously. But flooding that occurs maybe due to torrential rains and once in a while issue should be controlled more properly by having an adequate drainage system to get out the water as quickly as it comes, so that it's not able to have seepage or penetration into the underground parts of the road network, the base and the soft base. I think these are areas that are important for us to look at.
Indeed, Engineer Issa Usman Moabino. Now, let's return to Engineer Felix Atume once more. In fact, what will appear to be your final contribution for this morning? Which way forward now, or how would you advise the current administration to address the situation at the moment? Because we are in the heat of the flooding or rains in Nigeria, which of course we predicted we're going to have so many states that will be flooded. Now, I hate these days to hear about certain routes which I've had for the past 20, 30 years. Biniore, Enugu Port Harcourt, Ibadan, Lagos. These roads, they have never been completed by any administration. East-West road, they are there, very perennial. Nobody, it has never been completed. And we see now flood will come and even clear the ones that have been done, and so on. So that's by the way. But which way forward, so that we can stop counting our losses with respect to losing the roads that we have already expended huge, in fact, humongous amount of money to construct.
First and foremost, you raised a question earlier. Can't we have mega companies to compete with foreign companies? That's a very fundamental question. And
I hope we're not beginning to have a freeze along the line of communication with Engineer Felix Atume. Let's hope he could return to continue to complete his statement. Are we having a clear signal from him presently? We need to, okay. All right, we're having issues with that. So Kingsley, maybe you have the problem.
Yeah, that's right. Engineer Eze, let's also get your closing thoughts. Quick, I don't want to say quick action points, because sometimes we're always looking for quick fixes in our country. How do we overcome this embarrassment, from the executive branch, from the legislative branch, and then from the professional associations?
Yes, from the executive branch, to me, is political will of the president to put his foot down and said, this is what I want, and support everybody along the line. On the legislative arm, it's for them to key into Mr. President directive and then don't distribute their resources so thinly. And then the professional line, for them to be ethical in ensuring that certificates for payments are only issued for jobs done, and be ethical about it. But more depends on what the president wants. And because the president can bring his office to bear on the National Assembly to say, hey, I'm not going to do state road, I'm not going to do local government road, I'm going to use all the money available to me to finish these major roads. Even if for the first 1 year, I'll finish this next year and all that. And before you know it, okay, one by one, we'll finish all the roads.
All right. Engineer Emeka Eze, the former Director General, Bureau of Public Procurement. In fact, you sanitized the place, during your time. That was when we started hearing a due process. Also, past President of Nigerian Society of Engineers, we appreciate your time and, of course, your line of thoughts this morning. Thank you indeed. Engineer Issa Usman Moabino, road reform advocate and highway expert and pioneer chairman of the Nigerian Institution of Highway and Transportation Engineers. We're going to have you once again because you have so many titles here, so you can discuss other issues. Thank you indeed for reaching us from Kaduna. And again, we've had the Engineer Felix Atume, former Registrar of Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, COREN. We thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. For now, Kingsley, we have come to the end of the show. We'd like to thank you for watching the program. We will return again tomorrow morning to, of course, focus attention on a fresh topic. topical issue. My name is Kyrian Umayo. See you again tomorrow.
I am Kingsley Osadola. Look after yourselves.